Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Tech Motoring. On today's episode we're going to be reviewing this 2016 Mazda CX-5 Grand Touring with technology package. Fully loaded as much as it can come in this year, so stay tuned, we're going to be right back. Alright everybody, welcome back. Well, like I was saying before, in 2013 Mazda introduced the Mazda CX-5, which is their mid-size crossover vehicle, as you can see right here. Now, in 2013 Mazda was trying to get on the bandwagon of crossovers, and if you might remember, they had the Mazda CX-7, which is a little bit bigger than this, and then the Mazda CX-9, which is their three-row larger of their SUV crossover series. However, when they introduced the Mazda CX-5, they probably didn't realize how big this was going to take off. And there's no denying that they hit this right on the head, because not only is it a perfect 5-seater, plenty of cargo space behind that second row seats, plenty of power under the hood to get this as your everyday driver, and of course, at almost 30 miles to the gallon on the highway, what else could you ask for in a mid-size crossover? So the first thing we'll start at with this, now like I was saying before, this is the Grand Touring with technology package. So this is fully loaded as far as it comes, except for this is only front wheel drive. It is not all wheel drive. So this being just a front wheel drive model, you save a couple bucks depending on where you live, but obviously if you get an all wheel drive version, you probably pay a little bit more premium for that extra two wheels spinning if you live in those snowy and ice climates. I mean, really, they did such a good job on this car with the body lines. It's not overdone, but it's done just enough. They put these little plastic inserts here in the wheel wells just to kind of give it a little bit more contrast to the color. Now, this is also the white pearl option color, so this is actually a little bit more expensive with this color, but even so, regardless of what color you get this car in, this actually looks really, really nice. The body lines are just really cool. Now, of course, we're going to go over all the technology features that you get in this year, the things that they put into it, and the things that you would have expected them to put into it, but they didn't. And actually, there's a big change going from this 2016 model and stepping up one more year to the 2017, where they redesigned the body a little bit and actually added a lot more features to it. So we're going to be going over those shortly. But anyway, let's start under the hood. Okay, so let's take a look at the Mazda engine that comes in this year. Now, you do have the 2-liter, which comes in the sport base model of this, but most of them got the 2.5-liter Skyactiv engine, and this is what this is. 184 horsepower, 185 foot-pounds of torque comes out of this motor. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but the way that they tune it with the transmission is actually pretty impressive. Now, granted, I will admit, this is not as fast as a lot of other crossovers on the market, some of them pushing 250, 260 horsepower, and those you definitely feel a much different vehicle. But this is adequate for the everyday driver. It's adequate to get you where you need to go and to definitely merge onto highways at a rapid enough pace. Plus, there's a fancy sport button that we're going to get into a little bit later. So it shows you exactly what can change by just pushing a little bit of a button. But obviously the 2.5-liter for Mazda is pretty much the staple now. Back in the early 2000s, they started using the 2.3 liters, and those motors were pretty solid. The 2.5-liter has been pretty much the staple since they replaced that 2.3-liter. So this is a fantastic motor. They've used these pretty much every single CX-5 all the way up to even recently, and they are very, very impressive. In fact, even in the newer models, they're strapping a turbocharger to these things now, give them a little bit extra power, a little bit extra efficiency. So definitely a solid motor, and once again, good gas mileage. You can easily get over 35 miles to the gallon if you're doing about 45, 50 miles an hour. Of course, at highway speed 65, 70, you're probably dropping down to about 28 to 30, depending on your elevation, and of course, if you're using the air conditioning. But overall, solid motor, very, very good to have. Now, these are the Grand Touring wheels that come on here with the larger 19-inch sized rim. Now these are sitting on 225/55 19s, which are actually a relatively large tire. These are very good at getting over some, rougher terrain, taller terrain, and they do give the car a nice ride height. And even with the 19-inch rim, you still get a pretty decent fat sidewall here. Even though these may have a larger wheel, the ride is actually still very comfortable due to that thick sidewall that they still allow you to have on this vehicle. They don't take out that ride comfort because of the larger wheel. And we'll get into more of the dynamics of the handling and the feel of the suspension more as we get into the car and drive it, because Mazdas are typically known for being a little bit more sporty than a lot of manufacturers. So they don't have as much suspension travel, and they also feel a little bit tighter in the corners than most vehicles, especially one of this size. So it is very impressive how this car actually drives, even if you want to act a little bit sporty on some days. So we are in the back of the Mazda CX-5 and taking a look at the cargo area, the cargo capacity, and seeing how big it really is. So one of the features that is missing off of this model, like I was mentioning before, is an auto lift tailgate. So you actually do have to pull a button to get the tailgate to lift. No big deal. It does come up pretty simple. And as you could see, the Mazda CX-5 does have quite a bit of cargo space. Now the cargo space does come completely carpeted from the factory. This is an aftermarket OEM Mazda rubber mat that you can buy for these vehicles as well. You do have these two pockets in the side, which I highly recommend getting the mat for, because the mat actually goes down into those pockets and does keep everything from moving. Now underneath this is the spare tire. Yes, a spare tire. And that spare tire will come in handy occasionally, like it did for me a couple years ago. And as you can see, there's actually quite a bit of cargo space in here. Just to kind of show you an example. I mean, I could fit in here pretty well. I'm 5'7", and as you can see, there is plenty of cargo space back here. Now, the other cool feature about the Mazda CX-5 is that, of course, these seats fold down just like many other crossovers to give you that extra spare cargo space. And just with a flick of a switch, your seats will fold down flat, like so. And you have all this extra cargo room here. And of course, this cargo cover right here is actually completely removable as well. You can pull these out, but these are actually optional in this vehicle. Moving into the back seat of the Mazda CX-5, you do have plenty of room. This is very comfortably able to seat people back here. So let's move in a little bit closer and take a look. So as you can see, I'm sitting in the back seat pretty comfortably. I have plenty of space between me and the seat in front of me. Now, keeping in mind that the seat in front of me is actually in the position that I would sit in. Once again, 5'7". I'm not very tall, but I'm still have at least 5 or 6 inches here between my knee and the seat where it would start becoming uncomfortable. Headroom obviously seems to be pretty good as well, as they put a little bit of an indent in the roof right here for taller passengers. Now, really, this is where things are lacking in this model year of the CX-5. There's nothing back here. Absolutely nothing. You do have your power windows, of course, but you have nothing here. You have no vents, you have no buttons, no USB ports, no nothing. You do have cup holders, which is nice for a cup, but honestly, most of the time you're going to be spending in the back seat, or your kids are going to be spending in the back seat. You think you would give some sort of way to, I don't know, charge up a tablet or something like that. But really, this is the one biggest gripe I have about this back seat, is in this model here, they really didn't give you anything. And this is the fully loaded model with the technology package. You think the technology package would put at least a couple USB ports down here. But unfortunately, that was not an option in this model year. But if you're not really worried about somebody charging their phone or tablet in the back seat, then this really shouldn't be a concern. But missing those vents, that was a big oversight. Even in 2016, that was a pretty standard thing. Anyway, let's move to the front seat. A little more exciting up there. Okay, so here we are in the front seat now of the Mazda CX-5. And like I was saying, this is a very comfortable spot. Leather seats, beautiful, comfortable, and they did a lot with the leather trim in this vehicle. Everywhere from, the door panels, even up here in the console, even down here in this centerpiece console here, they actually covered that in leather, which is really nice because they put that stitching in there to match. And I really think they highlighted a lot of the nice features of, you know, what they were trying to go with this car. Is that when you're the driver, you want to be in a nice, kind of luxurious cabin. And, you know, they really pulled that off. So let's go door panel to door panel to see what kind of features we have, and we'll talk about a little of those more in depth. So here on the driver's side door, you have obviously your 4 power window selectors. Just the driver is actually auto up and auto down, which is a little bit weird. Normally the front 2 are both auto up, auto down, but in this case, just the driver's side. And I know Mazda has put all 4 windows auto up and auto down in the past because my previous car actually did have auto up, auto down for all 4 windows. Obviously, you have your rear window lock, you have your unlock and lock for your doors, mirror adjustments there, of course, nothing too special. Don't forget the Bose sound system in this vehicle due to the fact that it is the technology package on top of the Grand Touring. Of course, you get a little cubby here for some storage of loose change or whatnot. Now here's where some of your settings come in. Traction control system, you get to reset your tire pressure monitoring system. Your blind spot indicator warning will be right here as well, and of course your lane departure warning. Now, not to be confused with lane departure assist, this vehicle does not have a way of keeping the vehicle in the lane for you, but it does have the ability to warn you if you're starting to shift over the line. And the system works very well. Of course, all your cameras and everything are right up here, and this also does have radar cruise control, which we'll talk about more when we do the driving review. But as we continue to go on the left side of your steering wheel here is pretty much all your audio controls and your phone controls. On your right side is your cruise control. And once again, radar cruise control is in this vehicle with the technology package. So the radar cruise control is really awesome in this vehicle. However, there's a couple little things about it that kind of throw me off, and I'll go over those with you during that driving review as well. Of course, going from the gauge cluster, you do have your tachometer to the left, which I think is a really good indicator of Mazda's sportiness. They always wanted to do more with the sport aspect, and having that analog tachometer is a big part of that. You know, they really want you to see those revs go up and shift, and it's really, really nice. But a lot of cars don't do that nowadays. A lot of cars don't even put tachometers in. But anyway, in the middle, nice big speedometer that you'll need because that's the only one in this vehicle due to a lack of a heads-up display, which we'll go into a little further later. On the right-hand side is actually an LCD screen, and that screen will light up with whatever you need to know at that moment. Plus, you could go through menus on that right-hand side and adjust what you see on that screen as well. And of course, all your cruise control options are done through that small screen as well. Now, full climate control in this vehicle with the dual zone option, so the passenger has the ability to be at whatever temperature they want, and the driver can set theirs separately. Now, of course, once again, because the rear does not have any vents, that's basically just driver side and passenger side at this point. But really good job on this. I've always had climate controls in my Mazdas, and actually they are always top notch. Once you find that temperature that works right for that vehicle, it works great. I've almost never adjusted anything else other than the temperature a couple degrees since I've owned this vehicle for over 4 years. And of course, you do have heated seats for the driver and passenger as well. Not cooled seats though. It does not have any fans built in to cool you, but it does have heated seats for the winter. And I do like how they accented this interior with the leather and this brushed nickel that kind of goes across the length of the interior. Really, really nice job that they did on that. Kind of just brings everything together. It's on the door panels, on the door handles, and across the entire length of this dashboard. Really nice job. Now, this vehicle comes with the 7-inch screen. Now, 7 inches pretty good at the time. That you may realize that some of the newer Mazdas, they brought them up on top of the dashboard up here, so it's a little bit more in line with your view of driving. However, I prefer it to be right here. I don't like having anything up and kind of in my way of viewing out that windshield, but they do a good job putting that 7-inch screen there. It does have a CD player as well. Now, do keep in mind that if you're looking for a vehicle with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, this vehicle did not come factory with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. However, if you wanted to go to your dealer, you can actually have it installed on this vehicle, because I actually went back to the dealer and had it installed a couple of years after I purchased this vehicle. It was something they had brought out in like 2017-18, and then you were able to upgrade the system of your vehicle and actually put Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in it, even though they didn't come with it originally. And because it's dealer installed, it's all covered by your Mazda warranty. And because they do that, they actually do change out this panel down here with your USB ports, so they have to put higher powered USB ports, and they have one that has your phone indicator on there, so that's the one you plug in to use Android or Apple. Now, of course, this does come equipped with a sunroof. This sunroof is capable of going all the way back or going up a little bit just for a vent. Nice addition to this vehicle. I really like it, the fact that they decided to put that in there. Now, on the 7-inch screen, it does give you a lot of options for your different options for the vehicle. For the technology package, you can adjust your automatic headlights, you can adjust a lot of different settings like your lane departure warning and a bunch of other safety features as well, all done through this factory screen. So this is a big part of it, and actually it is done very well, because you see Mazdas are now using this knob here that actually turns. It moves up, down, left, and right, and actually will push in for enter or OK or confirmation, and that is huge. This is a 7-inch touchscreen. However, I've probably poked that thing maybe 3 times in over 4 years of owning this vehicle. So it just goes to show you that this knob is extremely well done, and also it stops you from having to do this while driving your vehicle. You don't have to punch the screen and poke it and do all this stuff. Plus, they lock the screen after you start moving. So once you get up to a few miles per hour, that screen stops working anyway. So you have to use this knob for everything, which is perfectly fine by me, because I found everything I needed to do with this knob perfectly fine. And surrounding this knob is some of your key buttons that you would use on a daily basis, like just a back button here, or the music button that brings you to the main music page, the home button that brings you just back to the main screen, the navigation button, which obviously brings you to your built-in navigation, and then of course you have your favorites button, which actually brings you to a menu of favorites, and that could be your favorites for your radio stations, favorites for your people that you would call on occasion. So it brings you right to that favorites menu where you can see all that stuff, and then you can decide, you know, what you want to do from there. And then of course volume, not only being on the steering wheel, but also this little knob right here that you could just turn to adjust your volume and push to mute and unmute. Fantastic idea. Now here's that fancy sport button I was telling you about before. We're going to get more into that during the driving review. This does change the driving dynamics of the vehicle quite a bit. It does adjust the transmission timings. More or less, it adjusts the throttle response of the pedal. So this way it gives you that feeling of more power up front, and then of course holding those gears out longer to allow you to, you know, feel like you're driving a little more sporty. And then of course this shifter here actually will go into a sport mode for manual shifting up and down. You also have for your headlight options, now these are LED headlights on this vehicle, which is really nice. You do have the auto option that have them turn on and off automatically depending on the brightness of outside. You do have fog lights on this vehicle as well, which is nice. And then of course your wipers are automatic rain sensing wipers. However, no car has ever really gotten it correct, but they work pretty decent in this vehicle, and it's just something that is really quick to just flick them if you need them. Of course, this vehicle is also equipped with a rear wiper blade that you can control from here. Other than that, really not much more to talk about on the interior of the vehicle. Passenger really doesn't have much more than a glove box, but it is a very comfortable ride for either person. And of course, I don't want to fail to mention that this car does come with a 9-speaker Bose sound system with a subwoofer right here up front, which sounds amazing every time I've had a car with a Bose sound system in it. Amazing. Well, anyway, let's go take a look at that driving review. All right, shift into drive and out of the garage we go. Now, one of the nice things I like about this car right off the bat, its turning radius is actually pretty impressive. So just to make really sharp turns doesn't really take much effort. It is an electronic assisted power steering system. That is one nice thing about this vehicle. So now the ride is nice. I mean, you can hear some tire noise. It does have nice riding aspect to it. It's not super bouncy with some cars. Sometimes you end up hitting some of these small bumps and you kind of just feel like this floating of you know, the suspension travel, and that sometimes gets really annoying. With Mazdas, you typically get a very stiffer suspension, not like overly stiff where it's uncomfortable, but stiff enough where if you hit a large bump, yeah, you might feel a little bit more, but it doesn't hurt to hit it. You know, it's not like hitting it in a sports car, but it's also not hitting it and then like doing this like bouncing out of control kind of feeling. Like, oh yes, very soft suspension, but yeah, but then you hit a bump pretty hard and you just end up having this like continuous bounce over and over again for a while. And that can sometimes be very off-putting, is when you have that. And that ruins the ride too, because if you're steering into a corner and you hit a little bump, you don't want that suspension travel to be like this while you're trying to steer. You want it to be fairly stiff. So here we are, we're going to be merging onto this highway here. Great steering, great response. Very little body roll. Very little body roll in this vehicle. Decent throttle response, and I like how the transmission holds it. Like, it knows that when you give it a lot of gas and that you get off that gas pedal, it kind of keeps those RPMs up just a little bit, just enough for you to be like, hey, if you want to get back on it real quick, do it now, because I'm already in that band. And that's nice for them to do that. And that's not even in sport mode. Once we get into sport mode, we're going to see a lot different aspect of that whole holding out the gears longer. So here we are on the highway, cruising between 65, 70 miles an hour. And I mean, this is nice. I mean, it's comfortable. The wheel is, you know, keeping straight. The vehicle doesn't have a sway to it like some vehicles do. Sometimes you end up having those, you know, cars that have this tendency of swaying a little bit, but you don't get that with this. You don't get that swaying motion that's, you know, you're kind of bouncing between those lines. It's very consistent. So one of the things I'll do right away is the cruise control. So once again, this is radar cruise control, and what you do is you set your distance how you want it, and then you set your speed. And then whatever you set your speed at will be the maximum speed that your car will ever go once it's set, which means that if it comes up to a car that's going slower, it will then automatically pull back and keep the distance that you set. And you do have up to 4 settings for that distance control, so you don't have to necessarily stay at one uncomfortable position. You can adjust it however you like. Now, the dynamic cruise control in this, the radar cruise control, is good, but it's not great. It doesn't have stop and go functionality. Once again, something that they brought in the later versions of the Mazda CX-5 was the full stop and go in traffic ability, where this car will be able to pull up to a car behind it, come to a complete stop, and then when the car in front of it starts to go, this car will resume going. Now, typically you have to hit a button for the car to resume going, but still the functionality is there. You never had to hit the brakes. With this vehicle, it's a little different. It doesn't have the full stop and go. So what that means is that when you are on radar cruise control and you're coming up to a vehicle that's coming to a stop, this car will get down to about 19 miles per hour and then turn off the radar cruise control, which is scary, because sometimes that distance between you and that car in front of you is not very far, and when it kicks off that radar cruise control, it has a tendency of, you got to be quick about it. So that being said, I'm not thrilled about that and how they did that with this year, or these years of the CX-5. I really wish they had implemented stop and go, but it took them a little while, I guess, to get the proper technology in there for the stop and go ability. And once again, a couple years later, they brought that into the Mazda CX-5 line. And you would probably still need to get the technology package in order to get that. Now, this car does have the ability to panic stop if necessary. So if you are driving and the vehicle sees that you are approaching another car at a rapid pace and it does not believe you're going to stop in time, this car does have the ability to slam on a brake and come to a complete stop. I have never had that happen ever since I've owned this vehicle. I've had it to the point where it has screamed at me and come up on the screen really, really bright and big red letters, brake, and telling me to stop. But I've never had it to the point where it actually forced me to stop, where it stopped itself. So I don't know how close you have to get to something before it'll do it. But anyway, let's try this radar cruise control real quick. So here we go. So actually, it's doing it right now. So I just set the cruise control for 41. We are only doing about 30. The car in front of me slowing down. And the car had automatically got off the gas, applied the brakes, and has kept me at the distance in which it is set for. And this is what the beauty of this vehicle is, that you can just have this and get on the highway and start cruising and never worry about, you know, running into the back of a car. And now that car just moved out of its way, so now my car is moving itself up. Let's show you how the radar cruise control works for coming to a stop. So here we are, we're going to come to a stop here, and now I'm not on the gas or the brake. The car's doing everything. The car in front of me is braking. We are braking. We are braking. Braking. Here comes 20 in a second. And there's that chime. And it continues to hold the brake for about 1 more second before it shuts off. It tells you basically you're on your own. So it's not terrible, but if you're not paying attention, you will still probably roll into the back of the car in front of you. However, I don't know if that panic stop feature in this car will actually work all the time, or whether it'll stop you before you hit the car in front of you. I think it's really just to minimize damage, not necessarily to, you know, rely on it as a stop and go feature. So here we are sitting in traffic, and, you know, one of the nice things about this car is it's quiet. I mean, it does have some engine noise, as, you know, Mazda enthusiasts will know that, you know, sometimes that Mazda engine is just very iconic and very cool to hear. So when you do hit that gas, it's there. But idling, it's smooth, it's quiet. So actually, as we're coming up to this light, I'm going to be making a turn. I'm going to be putting this in sport mode. We're going to see a little bit difference of, you know, how this reacts with the gas pedal here. And now keep in mind that this is the front wheel drive, so it is a little easier to spin the tires on the front wheel drive version versus the all wheel drive version. However, it still has very good traction. If it's in the rain, you will spin the tires a little bit, but really not too bad. So here we go. And not too bad. And as you might hear, it keeps the RPMs up higher now in between gears. So it gives you that quick burst of acceleration when you need it. All right, coming to a red light, brakes. The brakes are very good in this car as well. They're not overly sensitive where sometimes you feel like you hit the brake just a little bit and it kind of grabs real hard. You do feel the brake as you're pushing it down, and you can kind of vary your, you know, your pressure a lot nicer in a vehicle like this. I know some cars you get into and you hit the brakes just a little bit and it seems like there's always that instant jolt. So let's put this into manual mode. Now in this vehicle, upshift is pulling back towards you and downshift is pushing away from you, which I believe is the proper way of doing it, even though I've seen cars where they do it opposite. That's just the way it is sometimes. Some manufacturers prefer it that way, but I always prefer the method of pulling back to upshift. So let's get down to second gear. Let's do a little bit of a pull here. It's not too bad. You know, performance in this car, you're not buying it for performance. You know, that's something that you really have to understand, is that you're not buying this car to be a performance car. You're buying this car to be your daily driver, you know, have a couple extra people in the vehicle, chauffeur some things around in the back in the cargo spot. I mean, you have plenty of storage. It's the traveler car, you know, good gas mileage. That's what you're getting with this vehicle. You're not getting performance. I mean, your 0 to 60 time is not good. It's awful. I think it's like 8 seconds or something. And I mean, but that's fine. You don't necessarily need that 0 to 60 time going to work every day or when you take a trip on vacation. I mean, that's not what this vehicle is designed for. And like I said, 184 horsepower, 185 foot-pounds of torque. It doesn't even have a lot of torque. So, I mean, normally when you build a vehicle like this, you want to have a little bit more low-end torque, maybe 220 or so torque, you know, but it doesn't even have that. And honestly, I've noticed it a few times where, you know, sometimes you go from a dead stop and you get on the gas pedal to get in front of another car or something, and it does this weird thing where it just bogs down for some reason. From a dead stop in first gear, you hit the gas and it will just be like, whoa. And I'm not really sure what always causes that, but it's not very often. It's only when you don't need it to happen, basically. It's only when you know, on the very rare occasion that you need to get up and go real quick, and then all of a sudden it just decides to do this really weird, like, I'm not going to put all my power into it. And even though that could be a little bit off-putting, it's very rare that it ever happens. Now, how about shifting? Now, Mazda's not a big fan of CVT transmissions, which thankfully they're not, because I hate CVT transmissions. But this uses a regular 6-speed transmission in it, which is great. And honestly, you really could barely tell it's shifting unless you want it to shift a little harder. So for instance, I'm going to shift down right now at the 4th gear, and it's almost like you never felt it shift down. So, you know, let's shift down again 3rd. There we go. A little bit of a jolt between the gears, but so minor you wouldn't even notice it. So now that we're in 3rd, let's go ahead and shift to the 4th. Other than being a slight different change in the pitch of the motor, honestly, you can't even tell that this thing is shifting. It's smooth. Now, I will admit, if you put this in sport mode and you go ahead and bring those revs up to close to its red line, which is about 6,000 RPM, you will feel it shift hard into another gear. And once again, not a sports car, not designed to be that way. This is not designed to be that beat around the track vehicle. This is a car that's your daily driver commuter, but you can occasionally have fun with it. If you get on a really windy back road, you can feel confident that the car is going to respond the way that you want it to respond. And you know, that is a big selling point of the Mazda CX-5, is that it's responsive. You know, it's not like driving a car just to drive a car. I mean, Mazda's always built their cars to be driven, not to drive. Even though they make them comfortable for the daily driver, for the commuter, for the person who wants to take a vacation, who wants to travel in a vehicle, even though they design the cars to be that way, you can very easily change how this car wants to act and how it wants to be. And even though they give you that fancy sport mode to turn on and the manual shift ability, like, yeah, it's all there. You could do all that stuff. But even without that, this car is still good to drive. Well, everybody, I hope you like this video review of the 2016 Mazda CX-5 Grand Touring with the technology package. An awesome everyday vehicle, an awesome car to drive, an awesome car to travel with. This has been a pleasure to own for over 4 years. And you know what? Rightfully so. Mazda has knocked it out of the park with these CX-5s, and clearly it shows with the amount that are on the road nowadays. You know, 10 years ago, Mazda was really just this small company that wasn't selling a lot of cars, and now they have one of the most popular crossover SUVs on the road today. And with that being said, I think that is fantastic. But I'd like to thank you again for watching this episode of Tech Motoring. If you like what you see here, go ahead and hit the like button just below. Hit the subscribe button to this channel so you get updates for new videos coming out that we will have in the future. You can find us on different social media methods. Check out our website at techmotoring.com. We are on Twitter at techmotoring, facebook.com/techmotoring. I'd like to thank you very much again for watching. And always remember, welcome to the future and welcome to Tech Motoring. And we will see you on the next episode.